Hey, it's Drybear. Today we just got an awesome patch for the First Descendant with some really nice features in it that a lot of people have been asking for, so let's go over it. Yesterday I put out a review of going over the game, and much of my complaints for the game were around quality of life and convenience, and that's a lot of what we got in the patch today. One of the first things that shows, at least I think they're listening to player feedback, is they've addressed some of the visual spam that you get, specifically from a Glay build using the vestigial organ. The explosions from the rockets that come out of that weapon, when they fire so rapidly, end up covering your entire screen and block all visibility. So what they've done is they've reduced the effect, like the visual presentation of those explosions during the vestigial organ, to make it a little bit easier to say. The director says that the infinite build launcher build has become popular, and we took temporary measures to address an issue where the explosion effect was disrupting. We only provide the option to disable other players' projectile. We only provide the option, but we are planning to enhance this feature for the features as well. So they've already reduced the effect of vestigial organ, but they've also added an option. They have this in many games like Final Fantasy XIV, where you can reduce the visual effects and visual spam of other players, so you can see yours better and it's a little less spammy and dark. And some of the characters like Lepic or Viessa can reduce visibility quite aggressively, so having this as an option is pretty cool. They've also reduced the visual, the screen time for collecting resources that you craft at Anais at research a lot. There's some of those screens are just incredibly long for things that you craft all the time, so you have to click it, you have to wait like 6 seconds for it to finish, so they've reduced that to make that a little bit more reasonable, I guess. They've also continued their very light crusade against AFK players in the First Descendant. If you didn't see it yesterday, they put up a in-game screen, a full screen like pop-up banner will appear that says, "Please don't AFK, that's not cool." They're continuing this by adding an AFK option for the player report menu, so you can report players who are AFK in your queued missions if you want, and now hopefully we'll start ramping up some kind of treatment for that is healthy for the game and is useful. They recognize that AFK hinders the gameplay for others, especially in queued situations where you rely on that other player to be there, but they want to be cautious, and I think this is the right way to do it. AFK is tough to always tell. You know, if you are in your inventory or in your menu and someone reports you for AFK and you haven't moved in 9 seconds because you were dismantling something in your inventory, does that count as AFK? There's going to be some niche cases they're going to have to work through properly, and I think step by step is the right way to solve this problem. And they also say that they want to learn the patterns of AFK players, so they're not initially going to be acting on the AFK reports, but they want to see if they can figure out from their system at a large level if they can identify AFK players properly so that they can address it in a very meaningful manner. They updated the UI so that when you get one-time rewards from quests, they'll be a little bit clearer and marked easier, which I think is super good. They've also added a feature where you can now view the acquisition information directly in the target section of the library. And what this means is before, when you had targets that were set up for what you were targeting to farm, you could mark or track an item or a set of items. Before, in order to view this, you just could turn tracking off from this screen, and then you'd have to go click on the item, go to the item, re-find the item you're looking for, then go to the acquisition information. They have simplified that so that now you can hover over the target item down below here, and you can press F on PC and view where it drops directly without having to go to another screen, which solves some of the problem, but there's still a ton more to talk about. They also added firearm types and round types to the library weapon list. So when you're going to the access info library and go to weapon, it'll show the round type in the top right corner of the icon, as well as the type, like the category of weapon underneath it, rather than just the name. I still think they should add in, since this is like a library, I know this is for, like, this library is for searching for what you can farm, but I wish they would add in all the weapons, like purples and blues as well down here. You can, if you could just sort by it, that would be great, but having just the ultimates here I think is a bit of a miss. But they have added this so you can visually see which weapon is which from a glance. This one I think is going to be a bit of a friction point for some people. Fix an issue where a player who joined the Void Fusion Reactor could use the reconstructing device even if there were no void shards after completing the mission. So this one, I think they intended to make sure that in order to activate or take part in a Void Fusion Reactor, you had to have the correct Void Shards to do it. I don't know where they're going to land on this eventually, because I feel like it does feel very weird to start a Void Reactor and anyone in your party automatically has their Void Shards deducted, even if they didn't really want to participate in that sort of thing. And also, if they're trying to use the reconstructing device, I mean, ultimately, you probably want people to be farming the Void Fragments for the Void Shards anyways. But this one, let me know what you think about this one down below. It sounds like they wanted, no matter what, if you ever get any loot from a Void Fusion Reactor, you need to have the Void Shards on hand to gain that, whether you're just killing the boss or you're using the actual loot device that follows up afterwards. We'll see where this shakes out. Next one is pretty cool. When completing a Void Fragment mission, they increase the amount of shards you obtain if it's only 2 instead of 4. I don't know why they targeted this. So let's look at what this looks like in game and I'll explain what I mean. So if we go to the Echo Swamp, for example, we go to the Void Fragment mission that gives inorganic Void Shards and organic Void Shards. It gives only 2 Void Shards instead of all 4. They increased the value of this by about 1.5x or 50% more. You can see now that on hard, this Void Fragment mission now gives 20 inorganic Void Shards, whereas before I think it gave 13 or 14. So it increased it by a good margin there. I'm curious as to why they decided to do this, because it felt like, I mean, I'm not complaining that we're getting more Void Shards. More Void Shards is always awesome. But I think in general, the overall value of these, like 14 in 1s and 13 in 2s that you'd get for some of these, would give you 15 total. And the non-attribute ones that gave you all 4 would usually give you about 12 to 13 total, which means that overall, like if you're looking at your total Void Shards per completion of Void Fragment, the ones that only gave 2 Void Shards were always giving 2 or 3 more Void Shards total than the 4 ones from the non-attribute. So it's kind of interesting to me that they would increase the single ones. I guess maybe it's so it encourages target farming. So if you need a specific kind of Void Shard, having those that are like individual scaled up is going to be even better. It means now instead of 14 or 15 or 13 or 14, you can get up to 20 or 21 increase on those in some cases, which is really nice. But I also feel like there needs to be some love for the non-attribute Descendants that have to farm these that give all 4, but a lot less of each, right? They give all 3s or sometimes 1 4 and 3 3s for that value, and these didn't get changed, which is kind of rough. But a nice quality of life on here, which is in the patch notes as well, is the fact that you can now see which element is required by the Void Fragment on the map. So they changed this to not just be a single icon for Void Fragments. It actually shows the element on the map. So you can see that like this one is obviously a toxic Void Fragment, this one's non-attribute, this one is chill. And that way, again, at a glance, this was my big thing about TFD in my review, is just convenience and streamlining, being able to see that, okay, this is actually a toxic one. I need toxic to get this value here. So I know exactly what element I need before I go there and farm it. And this one is possibly my favorite change in the whole entire patch notes. Void Fusion Reactor mission tooltip has now been updated to display the number of Void Shards you have. They don't explain it well here, but this is an amazing feature that I've been hoping was coming very, very soon. So before, when you looked at a Abyssal Void Fusion Reactor, it would just tell you how many Void Shards you needed. It wouldn't tell you how many you had, if you had enough, and so you kind of had to constantly check into your consumable tab, go to miscellaneous, okay, remember that I have this much inorganic and this much organic, and then when you go to the map and you're trying to figure out which one you're going to be doing, you have to like look at it and count it in your head. No, now you can actually just look directly on the Void Fusion Reactor. On the left, next to the Void Shards, it shows the amount that you currently own, and on the right, it shows the amount that you need every time you activate the Void Fusion Reactor. So it is very clear whether you have enough or not, and if you need to go farm more, which makes that infinitely better. Like, these two changes are my favorite in this patch by far. The fact that I can at a glance see what the Void Shard requirement is and how many I have without changing menus, and the fact that I can see at a glance what the element requirement is for that specific area in that zone. On top of that, they've also added in the linked material to the Void Fusion Reactor without having to go to a different screen. All of these seem like no-brainers to me, but I'm glad that they're kind of like trying to rush them all in to make the game better. So underneath, like below underneath and below at the same time. Below the inorganic void shard, organic void shard, the void shard list, you can see the linked amorphous material requirement. So this is the amorphous material you need in order to open the amorphous box at the end of the Void Fusion Reactor, so you can see all in one place what you need to farm. And typically, by the way, if there's a Void Fusion Reactor here, usually that material comes from the nearby strategic outpost. Now let's talk about the fix the player issue when using the reconstructing device. The director says that they found an issue where people were using the abort mission feature to destroy, like if you aborted the right time as the Void Fusion Reactor boss was dying, you could gain access to the loot and it wouldn't consume your shards, which means you can alternate between people. You could have someone start the Void Fusion Reactor and then the other person aborts mission right before it drops so that they get the loot. Then you swap positions, join party, do it again, and that way you could basically cut your Void Fusion Void Shard requirements down by 50% for 2 people in a party, 33%, 25%, right? You keep chunking it down to make it so only one person has to pay the price. So now they're making it so you have to pay the price in order to get it, and to compensate for this, they're increasing the Void Shard farming for the single element, for the single Void Shard, and they do say that they have plans for the Week 5 update for August 1st coming up in the next few weeks to talk about the improvement for shard farming and the whole entire process. But it seems like the bug fixed an issue. They're just kind of preventing people from using the abort mission to get more materials from the Void Fusion Reactor boss, and then they'll try to address it more in the future. This one is probably my third favorite in the entire patch notes, because this one drives me absolutely nuts, especially as someone who does guide testing, weapon testing, and all kinds of build testing. There was a very arbitrary and small limit to the number of items you could favorite in the game, and they've increased that to 1,000 each for weapons, reactors, and external components, which is bigger than most players' inventory will ever be, which is awesome, which means you can favor as much as you possibly want. But if you went into the game and you actually went here, there's so many times where I wanted to, like, because I did a bunch of weapon testing, I wanted to favorite at least one of every weapon, so that this was like my best Explorer's Path, and my best The Last Knight, and my best Tamer, and my best, you know, any one of these. So I had one of each favorite, and I wanted to do the same for reactors and for external components to keep track of things, especially ones that have different elements, they have different defense numbers on them, they're part of different set bonuses. I wanted to favorite a bunch of stuff so that I know that when I use the auto dismantle feature, it's not going to dismantle purples or ultimates that I'm trying to hold on to for specific reasons. So they raised the favorite limit, the attached limit, so you can attach and favorite as much as you want in the inventory. Big thumbs up for me. Then they made an update to the Ultimate Bunny high voltage module to make it so that it's not pure random. It targets the closest enemies first, which gives you a little bit more control as Ultimate Bunny to target specific enemies, right? It's based on proximity now, so whichever enemy you're running closer to, it will trigger on those first before the further away ones, so it's not pure random. So if you're running a very difficult mission or you don't one-shot everything, it's a lot easier to figure which enemy you're going to hit and also how strong you're going to hit them as well, which is nice. Allergy and reconstruction serum of Eugen now applies to Colossus as well. I don't know why it didn't do this in the first place, but that's a nice update. Ultimate Bunny electric charge, high voltage, and electric condense sound effects have been changed. I think they were just a little bit too annoying. Hopefully they ended up just kind of smoothing these out a little bit. And for the special skin, the awakened one, if you ended up getting that one, they simplified the requirement in order to evolve the skin, which is kind of nice. They also now allowed you to do the escape menu trick for after completing an infiltration operation. They have removed the time limit on the fortress, heart of the fortress, and they cleaned up fortress quarantine zone as well by moving the supply drone closer to the fight area. So a lot of these changes, like these kinds of things, by the way, are very niche things that are very quality of life and feel good things that show that they are kind of taking care of the player in a good way. There's a bunch more in the game they have to take care of, but this is a really good sign that they are listening to player feedback and doing their best to try and make the game feel better overall. This one is absolutely huge. So, the position of immunity spheres of named monsters will not change anymore as the monsters move or rotate. This one is a big part of the immunity spheres being really annoying, but if you didn't know, like when a character is in, when an enemy has spheres above their head, if like they're fixed to the orientation of the character you're fighting, which makes them kind of hard to hit sometimes. So if they're like attached to me, imagine they're like floating behind me like orbs. If I'm the enemy and I move like this, they're gonna stay in orientation to me. So they almost like this billboard effect where they're moving around side to side, which makes them kind of overlap on top of each other, block each other. The sphere that's immune goes over the one that's not immune while you're shooting at it. It gets really annoying. So it sounds like they've decoupled the orientation of the spheres off of the elite that you're facing, which means that the spheres are going to be relatively static while the boss is jumping. Like, they'll stay with the boss, right? They're going to move with them and if they jump up and jump down. But as they rotate and animate, they're not going to be wobbling and freaking out all the time, which makes it a lot easier to target them individually. When doing hard, the drop quantity on hard difficulty has been increased by approximately 1.5. I would need to go in and test the extent of what they mean, because this could be everything in the field that drops, like everything, even from the containers and things like that. But in general, I think this probably should have been here from the beginning. Great change. This means it's easier to farm some materials, and hopefully this even applies to mission monster drops as well, which are kind of this secret drop number for specific things. Hopefully this just applies globally to everything in the field, which is going to be super great. There are some people out there that cause this to be a requirement, and I'm so glad for it, but the stack limit for consumable items has been increased from 1 million to 100 million. So if you've just been ultimate bunnying your way through the Rockfall mission or the Echo Swamp mission, stacking up hundreds of millions of things, you're now going to be able to stack a lot more of those items, which is really nice. There were also some icons in the First Descendant that were a little bit too close for comfort to icons that you would see in Warframe or Destiny, like a little, like more than just a little. And so they made a comment here that they said that they developed the game with deep affection and respect for other looter shooters. They're obviously inspired by other looter shooters and FPS MMOs, and they take feedback regarding other games very seriously. So with the hotfix, they have updated some of those icons that were a little bit too close to their competitors to be a little bit more unique and original for the First Descendant. A big update here, but they fixed some memory leaks and some memory issues. This was massive. The game, especially on PC, ran like doo-doo in some cases, especially if you had frame generation on, DLSS on, or some other functions inside of the main menu on. It would cause it to just basically consume, like Cookie Monster, all of your available RAM and VRAM and just never let go of it, just like stored in its cheeks like a chipmunk and refused to let go. So they fixed a lot of that with this update. The memory optimization, especially on PC, is much better. I can already tell a very noticeable difference with these, and hopefully they continue. There are still some crash issues and some console specific issues that they need to adjust, but this is a good sign that they're moving in the right direction. They also fixed an issue where you could trigger the lightning pulse from Bunny by rolling into a wall, and so some people were using Bunny to just forehead themselves into a rock wall and farm quickly to do that. So you can't do that anymore. They fixed that, and they've addressed a few issues with some of the motion, like on Kyle's dash, and some of the jump movement that happened on him that I think was partly VFX and SFX, but also partly networked as well. There was also some missions in the game that were programmed to make sure that you had a high intensity for it. There was one specifically in White Knight that would allow you to have 4 different spawns going at once, and actually would ramp up if it felt like you weren't being pressured enough. And so there was something in the code that said if you stood still and played passively, the game would try to get you more. And so some people would stand still at the edge of the mission zone in order to trigger that to cause more monsters to spawn so they could farm more efficiently. They removed that because they don't think that that's how they want people to play, and they hope that they can kind of manage that with correct spawns on its own. And they close out the notes by saying, thanks to all the love and support for the game. We feel the brimming energy of the community. They hope the hotfix feels like it's improving your gameplay experience, and I would say it definitely is. They also mentioned that they plan to hotfix the module switching mid-combat so you can get the most value out of it. This might target some of the Glay one-shot builds or some of the crazy Colossus one-shot builds, but they've acknowledged that they don't like module switching in the middle of what you're doing. And it seems like at least they don't want you to be changing your gear or your loadout at all when you're in the middle of a fight, because they want you to be in the fight, not in your menu. And at the end of this, they had confirmed that they're going to not do a patch that they originally planned next week, and instead they're going to spend more time on the following patch that's going to come on the week of August 1st. So they're focusing on the August 1st patch, which is the 5th week update. And in this update, they have confirmed that not only are we getting the new Descendant, Luna, the musical, music-based Descendant. They're also adding an Ultimate Valby. It'll be a new Colossus battle, a new ultimate weapon being added, some new modules, though they don't specify whether it's character or it's going to be weapon, some new external components, and some new skins coming in 2 weeks as well. So a big patch is on the way. But let me know what you think about this patch and the upcoming patch as well down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.